Welcome back to another episode of Food, Nutrition, and Wellness with Dr. Dan Remley. Today, he's going to be looking at hypertension and high blood pressure. So stay tuned. One of the silent killers that we have is high blood pressure and hypertension. Some of us know that we have high blood pressure and some of us don't. Today, Dr. Dan Remley, who's an associate professor with the Ohio State University Cell Centers, is going to be exploring hypertension and high blood pressure. Dan, welcome, and it's going to be a great topic.
Well, thanks, Patrick. It's good to be back. And, as you know, in the past, I'm a person that lives with diabetes, type 1 diabetes. And so I really have to be very mindful about my own blood pressure and those other risk factors for things like cardiovascular problems. So, which both high blood pressure and diabetes are, and they both contribute to cardiovascular strokes and heart disease and that type of thing. Today, we're going to talk about high blood pressure. We'll talk about what it is, then what factors influence blood pressure control. Just a few statistics for you. 1 out of 3 U.S. adults have high blood pressure, but only half of the people that actually have high blood pressure have it under control. It's also called hypertension, and it's a leading cause of heart attacks and strokes. Having high blood pressure increases your risk of dying from a stroke by 4 times and dying from heart attack by 3 times. The leading cause of serious long-term disability is strokes. And someone dies from a stroke about every 4 minutes or so. A stroke is when a blood vessel in your brain becomes blocked and part of the brain cells do not have access to oxygen. So that can cause a lot of long-term problems, morbidity and mortality-wise. Blood pressure is also called the silent killer. So a lot of times asymptomatic, meaning that we don't know that we have high blood pressure. And blood pressure is kind of like the pipes in your house. You think about if you turn the faucet on just a little bit, you don't have much water pressure in your house. But if you turn it on a lot, then you have all that water pressure. And so if you leave the faucet running full blast for an extended period of time, the pipes can become damaged. And so that's analogous to your blood vessels, your veins and your arteries. If they're exposed to high blood pressure over time, they can become damaged. And that can lead to clots and plaque buildup. And those types of things can lead to strokes and heart attacks. And also, if you have higher blood pressure, your arteries and your veins become less elastic, more rigid, and that makes the heart work harder, and that can lead to problems as well. So even aside from your brain and your heart, high blood pressure actually damages all the tissues and organs in your body, and so it can damage your kidneys, it can damage your eyes, all kinds of different organs and tissues. So, if you think about your eyes, you have lots of little capillaries, and same with your kidneys. And so, if those become occluded, or if the organs don't have as much access to oxygen, then they can become damaged. And oftentimes, it can spiral out of control because your kidneys also play a role in regulating your blood pressure, in addition to filtering fluid balance and regulating electrolytes. And so that sort of sets off a chain reaction. So if you have high blood pressure and you damage your kidneys, your blood pressure can become even worse. So people typically do not have any signs and symptoms until they have a problem. And so that's why it's really important to monitor your blood pressure. Now, sometimes if you have high blood pressure, you might experience like a headache or some tightness in your chest, but oftentimes the symptoms are unnoticed. And that's why it's called the silent killer. But the good news is high blood pressure is preventable. So there's lots of things that we can do with our lifestyle to prevent high blood pressure or to manage it. And there's also lots of medications available as well. Blood pressure indirectly measures the pressure in the brachial artery. And so you want to make sure that you get a cuff that goes around like your arm, and that will measure the pressure. And you want to avoid like the bracelets or the finger pressure monitors, because they're not quite as accurate and reliable as the arm cuff. You have an arm cuff, and it gives you a pretty good reflection of the pressure in the entire circulation system when the heart is pumping. And so that's called the top number is called the systolic, and that's when the heart is squeezing the blood out. And then when it's resting, that's called the diastolic. And so that's the resting number. And the most accurate way to measure blood pressure is through the arm, as mentioned earlier. And again, you do not want to use like the wrist or the finger monitors. So let's talk about blood pressure readings. If your blood pressure is high, one time the doctor will just ask your blood pressure checked several times over the next week or so. And if it remains high, the doctor may want you to go on medications or make lifestyle modifications. Normal blood pressure is less than 120 over 80. So 120 is that systolic, and that's when the heart is squeezing. And then 80 is the diastolic. And again, that's when the heart is resting. And so just some other numbers to think about too. Mentioned it should be below 120. If you have 130 systolic to 139, that could be an indication of type 1 hypertension. And so in that case, the doctor may want you to make some lifestyle changes that we'll talk about, or may put you on blood pressure. If the systolic is above 140 to 149, your doctor probably will prescribe definitely lifestyle changes, but also medications. And then a hypertensive crisis occurs when the systolic is greater than 180. And so in that case, you may have to go to an emergency room. They'll check it a couple times and might have to take some measures to get that down. But that can be a crisis situation. So let's talk about some factors that influence blood pressure. And the first is age. Of course, as we get older, our chances of developing hypertension increase. And so men are more likely than women to develop hypertension before the age of 45. Between 45 and 64, somewhere in that range, men and women have equal chances of developing high blood pressure. But above the age of 65, women are more likely to develop hypertension. So age definitely puts you more at risk for developing high blood pressure. So weight, the more weight that you have in your body, the harder your heart has to work to get your blood to all of your cells, organs, and tissues. And so by losing maybe 5 to 10% of your body weight, that can make a big difference in terms of your blood pressure. So weight can make a big difference. And then race. So African-American men have the highest chance of developing hypertension, followed by Hispanic and then white. And your family history. So if your parents had hypertension early on in their lives, maybe in their 40s, there's probably a good chance that you'll also develop hypertension. So it's important to know your familial history of hypertension and what your parents experienced. And then physical activity. If you are physically inactive, that puts you at great risk for hypertension as well. And most Americans don't get enough physical activity. So blood pressure can increase with alcohol intake, and drinking too much can cause irregular heartbeats. It can lead to stroke and can cause heart failure. So that's why the recommendation is 2 servings of alcohol for men and then 1 per day for women. Tobacco is also a very significant risk factor for heart disease and hypertension. And so if you're a smoker, you should give up smoking. And stress. High levels of stress will increase your blood pressure, at least temporarily. And so that's why it's important. Stress management is so critically important. And some people are more prone to stress and don't manage as well. You've probably heard of type A versus type B personalities, but the type A's probably experience more stress than the type B personalities. And so that's where stress management can become really, really important in terms of managing blood pressure. And so deep breathing exercises, mindfulness can be helpful techniques in terms of managing stress. And then, of course, there's sodium consumption. So the more sodium that you consume in your diet, we'll talk more about this next month. That definitely increases your risk for hypertension. And so sodium, salt, if it's in your bloodstream, it actually holds water, and so that increases the blood pressure. And so some people are more salt sensitive than others. In other words, their blood pressure is more responsive to high intakes of sodium. So we're going to spend a great deal of time talking about some eating patterns that we can adopt to lower sodium in our diets. Sodium is pretty ubiquitous in our food supply, unfortunately. And so therefore, if we can cut back on the amount of sodium that we consume in our diet, that can have a pretty significant impact on our blood pressure.
Sometimes individuals have oximeters. These test the amount of oxygen that's in your bloodstream as well as the pulse rate. And would you find that individuals thinking that their pulse rate is at, let's say, 70, that their blood pressure is okay?
Yeah, I think I'm not really sure about pulse and blood pressure. I think they're related, but you can have normal pulse and have higher and still have the high blood pressure. So the pulse is how many beats per minute, but each beat might have a different amount of blood pressure associated with it. So many times, you might have a normal heart rate, but still you're diagnosed with hypertension.
And speaking about sodium consumption, it is interesting. Many processed foods, and I know you're going to talk about this next month, but many processed foods have a lot of salt in them that many times we
Yes.
don't recognize.
Yep. Yeah, and so you're better off if you can eat. There's the recommendation is 3 servings of vegetables and 2 servings of fruit a day, and that's good because when you snack on fruit and vegetables, especially unprocessed, you're not getting all that sodium, but you're also getting nutrients like potassium, which counteract the sodium and can help lower blood pressure as well. So we'll get into like what types of foods have that potassium. But you mentioned oxygen availability, and so getting back to tobacco use, tobacco is harmful because it actually constricts your blood vessels, and so that increases the blood pressure. But it also has chemicals in it that damage the cell walls, and as said earlier, that can cause plaque buildup. But actually, cigarette smoke in particular, it actually reduces the amount of oxygen in your blood. So again, the heart has to work even harder, and so that's why people who smoke increase their heart disease risk by about 2 to 4 times than those who don't. Actually, about as much as 30% of all cardiovascular deaths attributed to smoking. So there's other comorbidities with hypertension. So these include high cholesterol, diabetes, kidney disease, sleep apnea. And so, if you have these problems, you're more likely to have hypertension. And sometimes hypertension can also lead to these other problems. So they're sort of related to one another. A personal note here, I was diagnosed with a sleep apnea, and so I'm on a CPAP now, but that has helped my blood pressure personally. And heart disease and stroke are the number one cause of death with those who have lived with diabetes. And about 65% of people who have type 2 diabetes die of heart attack or stroke. And they're 2 to 4 times more likely to have a heart attack or a stroke. So, kind of getting back to the diet and potassium. So, as I mentioned, potassium is one of those nutrients, those minerals that can actually counteract sodium in terms of the hypertension. And many people have too little potassium in their systems, and so they need more potassium in their diets. So just to kind of go over some foods that are rich in potassium, pretty much all fruits and vegetables have some potassium, but some are better sources than others. And so, example, our citrus products are pretty good sources. And then things like bananas and potatoes. I always like to think of those vegetables that are kind of mushy in texture. So avocados, bananas, broccoli, and even like the green leafy um, cruciferous types of vegetables are pretty good and have pretty good sources of potassium. Actually, milk's a decent source of potassium as well. So that's why, we really should have a balanced diet and meal plan and try to incorporate as many fruits and vegetables into our diet as we can. That's definitely going to help our blood pressure. Now, we'll talk about this next week quite a bit, but if you buy canned vegetables, they might be high in sodium. So you have to be careful about the form of how you get your vegetables as well. So there's research on women aged 50 to 79 years linked a diet high in potassium to lower risk of stroke and lower risk of small vessel disease. So let's just talk a little bit about some major things that we can do to lower the blood pressure, manage our hypertension. And, it's okay to go on medications. Your doctor, if you have stage 1 or stage 2, it's probably likely that your doctor will recommend some sort of medication to take on a regular basis. But he'll also recommend, changes in your lifestyle. So definitely if you're a smoker, to quit smoking, dietary improvements to become more physically active. So let's kind of go over those things. So if you're overweight, definitely by losing, 5 to 10%, it could be about 10 pounds to improve blood pressure. A 9-pound weight loss also lowers blood pressure between 3 to 10 millimeters of systolic and 1 to 6 for the diastolic. So as we talked about, lowering your sodium intake can make a big difference. There's an increased consumption of sodium raises the blood pressure. And so research has shown that populations that eat diets low in sodium do not have the increase in blood pressure with age that some of the Western cultures have. So becoming more physically active can definitely help your heart and can help manage blood pressure. You always want to talk to your doctor before starting an exercise or a physical activity regimen. But actually, as little as 30 minutes a day, most days of the week of moderate physical activity can make a big difference. And so there's a difference between moderate and vigorous. Moderate is, I kind of like to think of it this way. Moderate is where you go for a walk and you can still have a conversation with somebody. And vigorous is, your heart and you're breathing harder and your heart's beating a little bit faster. And it's a little bit more to have a conversation. So it could be like walking versus running. Walking's moderate versus vigorous, which would be like running, for example. So 150 minutes a week, that's 30 minutes a day of moderate. So just going for a walk, housework counts as moderate physical activity, gardening, things like that. Things you do that you're not sitting, but you're kind of working up a little bit. Your heart rate's going up a little bit. You're starting to breathe harder. Those are considered those moderate activities. So you don't have to run a marathon, but you can go for a half-hour walk. That can make a world of difference in terms of your blood pressure. And so doing that on a regular basis throughout the week can do quite a bit for your heart and help manage that hypertension. So learning to relax. There's lots of different stress coping techniques. And as I mentioned earlier, one is called mindfulness. And you can learn about mindfulness. You can get on YouTube. OSU Extension has a lot of resources that promote mindfulness and talk to you about how you can become more mindful. But it's all about controlling your breathing, slowing down your breathing rate, and being more mindful in terms of what you're doing. But that can reduce stress. Physical activity and exercise is another way to deal with stress. And so, talk to your doctor about just different ways that you can manage stress. And there's a lot of research that looks at social isolation, how that's related to more stress. And so, just not having friends, not going out with friends, can actually increase your risk for high blood pressure and heart disease indirectly, which 20 years ago we never thought much about, but we're learning more about how these social conditions can impact our physical well-being. So alcohol is there used to be sort of a common thought that a little bit of red wine every day would help your heart, but the recent research doesn't even support that any amount of alcohol helps your heart. And as a matter of fact, alcohol does contribute to high blood pressure. It actually dilates your arteries. And so the recommendation is to have no more than 2 servings for men and 1 serving for women. And just to kind of, I've talked about what a serving in past presentations. A serving is about 12 ounces of 5% beer. And it's about 5 ounces of wine. So that's about half a wine glass. And then it's only about a half a shot glass of 80 proof spirits. So that's like bourbon or vodka. So that's not very much when you think about what a serving is. So be very mindful of those servings and limit your alcohol use. And then we talked about just the problems that tobacco presents. And vaping is not a healthy replacement for tobacco because nicotine is that drug in the tobacco that actually narrows those arteries, those veins and arteries, and can cause high blood pressure. So you definitely want to reduce or stop your use of tobacco. And that's all tobacco products, whether it be cigarettes, chewing tobacco, vaping. You really want to cut back on that use of nicotine. And then you want to make sure to take medication if prescribed by your doctor or nurse and take the medication as prescribed. And so that's very important, like have a pill box and make sure you take that medication every day. And sometimes we can make all the changes in our lifestyle because we have that strong genetic influence. We really have to have that medication, especially as we get older. And so next month, we'll talk more about sodium. And do you have any questions, Patrick?
If we have an organization that we would like for you to come and speak to, what's the cost? Can you do it on Zoom? Are there a number of people that must be there to get you to come and speak?
Well, I do travel. It just kind of depends. If it's a private business, I may ask for a nominal fee to support my travel and time. But if it's for like a public event, I don't really charge much for those types of things. And I can present online as well. And we do have extension educators all around the state in the family and consumer sciences area that can come and talk to you or your organization, your group about heart health. And we have a program called Million Hearts, which this is derived from. But we also have programs like Dining with Diabetes, which go over similar types of topics.
What I'll do is Dan, I want to thank you. I found this information very noteworthy since I'm in one of those designated areas, specifically being a past smoker and being of age. We're talking with Dr. Dan Remley. He's an associate professor with the Ohio State University South Centers in the Food, Nutrition, and Wellness program. Dan, thank you.
Thanks, Patrick.